This will be covering Canva and Google Suite. Yes, you are in the right place if you're looking for student collaboration through Canva and Google Suite.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. We're going to ask that all of you come off mute, and you're going to share your name, school, content area, which would be helpful if you could see that on your slide right now. It's coming. Okay, so we're going to ask you to come off mute and share your name, school, content area, and then what are ways that you're currently having your students collaborate? And when you're answering this question, we really want to know about what's working really well for you in terms of collaboration, what's challenging in terms of collaboration. If you can't come off mute, please go ahead and drop it in the chat, and Kaylee and I will read it out loud and be your temporary voice for today. So does anybody want to get us started?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I work at Monroe Elementary School. My name is Sarah Kreider. I am the student support liaison, and so I'm not a classroom teacher, but I feel strongly about just the more we can incorporate strong instruction in the classroom, the fewer behavioral issues we'll have, the more engaged students will be. And so I do collaborate with teachers sometimes on strategies they can use in the classroom. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. Anybody want to hop in and get us continuing?
I'm Angie Brown. I'm at I always say that. My last name's Collins now. I got married last summer. I was Brown for too long. I'm old and I forget. But Angie Collins, I teach third grade at Bradley, and I have used a lot of collaboration for a long time. 21st century learning skills was a big thing when I went to school in 2006, I think, is when I graduated at first teaching. And then I also had some training through PEBC on that. So I've been really lucky that way. One of the things that I do that really is important and impactful, I think, is set the rules for collaboration. So with my kids, I have the kids develop the rules for collaboration within my classroom so that they can know what's expected and be really, cognizant about how they're collaborating and how to solve problems when they run into them. One of the big strategies I teach at the beginning of the year is using iMessages to solve problems so that they can say, I feel upset when you are saying that, it hurts my feelings, whatever, then they can hear each other better. So that is a big thing that I do. I use collaboration almost every day in my classroom in mathematics because I feel like I have triads with high, middle, low kids, and they collaborate on that. As far as using Canva, that was my project for my cohort. So my kids did do their economics unit, and they used Canva to develop a commercial and collaborated on their economics, their product that they were going to sell, and then they created their product. They found their product, they created their product. They made a commercial for their product in Canva, and then they sold their product. So it worked out really great. I'll share my commercials when I present my my cohort at the cohort.
Love that. Awesome. That is so stinking cute. Anybody else that wants to jump in and get this rolling?
Sorry, I hit the wrong button. My name is Jen Lewick. I am at Marama Elementary. I teach technology K through 5th grade. I'm hoping to learn, we use Canva already. But we haven't started with collaborative projects inside of Canva. So I'm hoping to learn some tips on how to make that less challenging.
All right, and then we have Jill. Jill is at TJ, and she teaches physics. So they're doing small groups for labs, activities, and problem solving, and just looking for ways to encourage greater participation always. And then there are a few students who have habits of being bystanders. I used to be one of those students. I loved being a bystander in the class, riding the coattails.
And I also appreciate Jill's call out, and I feel like Angela, like talking just about collaboration, whether it's through a digital tool or not, you're gonna run into these challenges of kiddos being bystanders. So what are those general good instructional moves that we can all make, whether there's a digital tool in front of them or not? And I really appreciate your call out on that. Before moving on, would love to hear from Brittany or Olga on how students are collaborating in your room.
So hi, I'm Brittany. I teach K-5 Tech at Maxwell. I am guilty of not doing enough collaboration. So I'm really hoping to get some ideas. When I've tried it in the past, I feel like we do a lot of conversations, like students will collaborate in sharing ideas, but ultimately end up producing independent projects or assignments. So yeah, looking for new ways to be able to do this in Canva or otherwise. In the past, when I've done collaborative things on Google Slides, I had a lot of students who would kind of be the low bystanders, or even I've had another student who went in and kind of messed around, like tweaked other people's slides. So I know part of that has to do with like setting up expectations at the beginning, but just looking for some ideas to start collaborating more.
Hi, I teach math and I'm at Denver School of the Arts. I teach 6th grade math, and we collaborate through the curriculum CMP3. So the curriculum is built based on the collaboration. So it's basically like every unit, every lesson expects students to collaborate. And mainly I do it in person. I don't use many electronic platforms for that.
Great. Thank you each so much for sharing. And yeah, Dre and I are former middle school teachers. So like kids deleting things, putting pictures that you couldn't even imagine on. Yeah, we've got really quick back pocket pivots that you can make in the moment when that happens. Well, if it happens.
So as you know, we're talking about student collaboration today. I'm super excited because we have a really wide range of like contents and age ranges in this crew. So we're gonna have a lot of brainstorming going on. And one of the things that I just wanted to quickly point out before we go ahead and get started is that like Angie's using Canva with her 3rd graders to make commercials. So like this isn't something where like, oh, they're not old enough, like they don't have the skills, they can't do it. Like they totally can. And then what our secondary teachers sometimes have to remember is that like they don't come to us with the skills that we wish they would come to us with sometimes. And so like, what are the supports that we need to like give them the tools that they can use to be successful here? And that's all about like, you know, rigor and making sure that all of our students have that like high expectation for what they're taking away and what they're collaborating on. So what we wanted to do is just like ground ourselves. And I know we do a lot of grounding in like PII and CRE mindsets, but what's super important to you as teachers is LEAP, because that's at the end of the day, like what you're evaluated on. So if we can give you some quick pointers to like just skyrocket your LEAP scores, awesome. What we're really going to talk about is that like student collaboration piece. So yes, we're talking about G Suite. Yes, we're talking about Canva, but we're going to like really hone in on the collaborative aspects of those tools. So when we go and have our individual work time, if you're like, I've never used this before and I want some like one-on-one attention, like Kaylee and I, we can take you to a breakout room, show you the steps, do all the things. But we're really going to hone in on that collaboration aspect. And we want to make sure that you have tools as classroom teachers or as supporting staff to set those high expectations for collaboration, and then really make sure that your students are actively collaborating throughout the entire time. So like Brittany, you were saying that like they're really good at collaborating to brainstorm, but then they end up making these individual products. Like we're going to try to give you some strategies that make sure that you have collaboration throughout the entire activity or project that you're doing. So we're really going to focus on key actions 3 and 4 for our high expectation CRE connection. So it's all about, collectivist approaches. So that's all about collaboration. And then we're going to make sure that like we're always rooting back to that high expectation piece, making sure that they're grade level appropriate. They have good cognitive demand. They're rigorous lessons. Rigor doesn't mean that they're like crying in their seats, but like they have some productive struggle there, and then they have the supports that they need to meet the goals at the end. You've probably heard us talk a lot about PIIs, or if you've done walkthroughs, had people come in and do this, they're talking about PIIs, maybe your leadership has. Just to hit that in case like you ever get a pop quiz, if you're doing some student collaboration in your room, you can say, hey, I'm hitting my 3 and 4 bucket because 80% or more of my students are going to be shouldering the cognitive lift here. They're going to be helping each other. It's going to be a lot of peer-to-peer interaction, and they're going to come in and be like, whoa, like this is amazing. And then, like I said, we're really going to focus in on that LEAP indicator. It has an entire section all to itself about collaboration. And we picked out some of the effective bullets. As you can see, we've highlighted below, students using digital tools and resources is part of that effective use of collaboration. And then when we get into the distinguished buckets, we're going to give you some strategies on how they can set goals for their collaborative groups, and then how they can also engage in accountable talk to make sure that everybody's shouldering that cognitive lift with each other and they're challenging each other's ideas, because we don't want the me's of the world just riding on the coattails of one person's doing all the work and then 5 other people get the credit for it. We want to make sure that every student is responsible for something in the group and actively contributes equally. So yeah, we're going to give you some strategies, then we're going to go into using tools.
Yeah, before we get into the specific tools, each of you kind of talked about, hey, collaboration in my classroom is great, but we do need those high expectations. So we just have a few intro slides on when you're using digital tools. What should you keep in mind when establishing high expectations for collaboration? So the first one is giving groups or kiddos clear instructions and a clear criteria for success. So kids collaborating need to know what their target is. So you could give them clear and precise language for procedural steps. I think Jill's working in high school, and if she wants them to use Padlet, she can't just assume high schoolers know how to go into a Padlet and make a post. So here's a sample slide of what giving clear instructions on how to post in a digital tool would look like. Just giving some screenshots, breaking it down into steps, just making sure that you're giving kiddos clear steps on how to collaborate. You could give kiddos examples, so showing what an end product could look like. You can have groups model what collaboration looks like in front of their peers. But also make sure that you're breaking down instructions into manageable chunks with clear end goals, and display a criteria for success. So having a Google slide up that has criteria for success. These are the 3 things that you need to hit. Here's some supports while you're working if you need it. And then there's a timer also down in the slide, just so kids have a sense of urgency as well. Another way to give high expectations for collaboration is clear group roles. Especially for elementary school teachers, rolling out group roles slowly and modeling maybe with lower stake assignments, maybe not starting group roles right with the end of unit assessment, but having group roles in more social emotional lessons or non-academic discussions to model what those roles look like. Also, just ensuring that each role has equal participation and rigor, so there's no bystanders. In the slide deck, there's a hyperlink to examples of group roles. So if you're like, oh, I have no idea what I want to break these like tasks down into, there are some quick roles that you can implement no matter what assignment you're doing. And there's a kind of clear definitions for what each of those roles entails. So you can tell a student what those specific actions are that they're taking as in that role. And then maybe kiddos can create their own roles or brainstorm the own action steps for each of those roles. That's a distinguished move. And then also just have a visual reminder like this slide down here, like, hey, if you're the timekeeper, this is what you're doing. If you're the note taker and facilitator. Angie, would love to hear your voice on this.
Yeah, I have a question or clarifying question, or maybe it's even a statement. I'm not sure. So in my classroom, I have a bunch of GT kids who are super high. And I also have some ELA kids and trauma impacted kids and SPED kids who are super not there. And so I don't always do that just because they're not able to take on any of those roles. But I still feel that they get such an empowered, impactful experience by working in the group and being part of it, that eventually what I've seen in my classroom is that slowly, but over the whole year, when they start out being in the group, by the end of the year, they could take on those roles. But at the beginning, I just want to mention for any elementary people, it might not be that possible for some of those really trauma impacted or low kids, but they see themselves, as long as they don't feel like they're failing. I feel like if you give them an assignment and they can't do it, they feel failing. So it's better, more equitable for them to not give them that assignment. Does that make sense? Do you agree or not? I'm just checking in to see if that's accurate, my perception.
Yes, I think one, you make a really good point of like how we group students, and that in itself is a very like thought out decision that you as a teacher are making, whether you're, you know, grouping students homogeneously by like data that you've collected from an interim, or if you're like mixing your groups up, maybe you're just like trying to really hone in on some social emotional skills and you're pairing different groups of students with people that they don't typically work with. That step one is like figuring out what your grouping is. And then I think that what you're referring to, Angie, is that like you can't just give students like, all right, you're going to be the facilitator today and hope you do well, because otherwise you're going to lose all your points and your group is going to hate you. Like, you cannot do that. So, you know, really starting out with those like lower stake tasks that might not have a grade associated with it. I remember that I used to do like the first 2 weeks of my class was all about like practicing different roles, and it was very low stake. It was like, we're learning, we're practicing, we're doing this, and then like going to students who are really struggling with a specific role and saying like, hey, I noticed that you're struggling right now. Do you want to go see how so-and-so does it over here? Like, do you want to debrief with them? Giving that opportunity to talk to each other. Sometimes I'll do jigsaws of like, all right, all of the facilitators who like were facilitating in their group, let's meet together and talk about some strategies that you use to facilitate. And that can also take the stress off of that. But yes, pairing them with people who you know are, you know, rock stars in certain areas can boost their confidence, give them some skills and strategies. And then, like you're saying, Angie, by the end of the year, like they're all rock stars and like ready to go blast through life.
Yeah, it also sounds like, well, one, you know your students. and you know their strengths and what they can bring to a group. And I think it also sounds like you give them a little bit of choice and flexibility as well in their group roles, which I think is just I don't know, sounds like an experienced teacher move, and just like kind of relinquishing that control of what it should look like to support building the skills for your kids in the end.
And I'll also hit on like the SEL skills that come with group roles, which actually is going to be our next slide here. But like those SEL skills, like if they don't take anything else away from group work besides like, wow, sometimes it can be really hard, it can be really frustrating, and I don't mesh well with everybody. That is a really good thing for them to take away. And then having strategies for like, I really don't like this person on like a personal level, but like I gotta work with them for right now. Like I have this project that I gotta do. We have our task. Like how do we, put our personal stuff aside and like tackle this project here? How can I communicate to them like what I'm frustrated about in a productive way that's going to help the entire group? How do I like take a deep breath? I'm really overwhelmed. I'm struggling. I feel like I'm not holding up my end of the deal with the group. Like, I feel like they're getting mad at me. What are strategies that I can do to, reflect and take that and, be productive with it? And that's a learning thing. And that's something that like adults are still learning on a daily basis. Every time I work with a new partner like team or a new content group or somebody else that I'm not used to working with, it's a learning experience. And so teaching them some strategies, it's going to be super beneficial to them no matter where they go.
Yeah, and I think like at sometimes when you're structuring collaboration, that content is secondary, and it's really the SEL skills that you're building that might be the primary focus of collaboration for that day. So making sure that you're explicitly incorporating SEL language, like, hey, today we're going to be self-reflective of our emotions during collaboration. Or today we're going to give each other positive affirmations during collaboration, and really naming a specific skill that you're going to be building with kiddos so they can focus in on that as well. Giving clear norms, like a lot of you guys said, maybe even co-creating them with students, like what does respectful language and interaction look like during collaboration? And that might be more of a beginning of the year thing. But also stressing to kiddos that communication is vital. If you guys aren't talking and if you guys aren't connecting, then it's going to be really hard to collaborate. So we need to share ideas. We need to become comfortable communicating with one another. And the last thing, and I think this is something that is an afterthought usually, but I think this is something you should start with, is celebrating team members. I think giving kids time during their collaboration to celebrate each other is an easy way to start building bridges between each other, to get that communication going, to build those positive connections and memories of what successful collaboration looks like. So we started already kind of talking about what SEL skills might kiddos need going into collaboration. Here's a list of skills. It's not clearly it's not limited to this list of skills, but what can you imagine your kiddos coming in kind of might needing support with for SEL? Again, Drea and I are both former middle school teachers, so I see resolving conflicts as a potential gap that I might need to support our kiddos with. Hey, when your groups run into conflict, here are some sentence stems to start a conversation and move past this roadblock together. If you guys want to drop in the chat or come over the mic, what are some SEL skills that you might want to keep in the forefront of your planning?
And it doesn't have to be like one. I know that very frequently, I would have different class periods who needed to focus on different SEL skills. So, my after lunch crew, we really needed to focus on self-motivation and perseverance. Whereas like my beginning of the day class, like we needed to talk about resolving conflicts and like working cooperatively. So like, what do I need to give my individual students to be successful? Those communication skills are huge, Angie.
and respect for others. I think respect for others and developing those communication skills. Again, I think allowing, and I know every teacher will roll their eye, allowing that content piece to maybe take a back seat while you're building those skills. So it's a little lower stakes can be a good place to start. But I know it's hard to find time to do that. Learning to ask others for insights.
Oh yeah, that's like a really big one.
Um,
Pushing each other's thinking and
Totally. And I'm just thinking of how easy sentence stems can get that conversation going.
Mhm. That open-minded piece, Brittany, like that is a skill that we have to teach our students, especially like literally all ages. Having them be open to others' ideas and being okay to say like, I see where you're coming from. I'm not there. Like, I don't agree with it, but how can we compromise? Or like, we just say like, all right, agree to disagree and move on from here. That is something that a lot of adults need to learn. So the more we can teach our students that, the better.
And I think as an adult naming, hey, there's not one right answer. There's not one right way to solve this problem. You all are going to bring different strengths to getting to that end goal. So value everybody's contribution. So we wanted to make sure we were all here together, regardless of what tool you choose. So you kind of understand how to ground high expectations in your classroom and kiddos are collaborating. So those were just basic instructional moves for high expectations for collaboration. And if you want to follow along with us, now we're going to go into specific collaborative experiences for kiddos in Canva and Google Suite. If you want to work independently, there's an additional resources link that you can click and do some self-exploration, looking at how to create group roles or collaborative assignments. Maybe you already have an assignment or project that you want to edit or rewrite based on some of the tips that you found in the slide deck, or maybe you can work in some SEL skills into some already existing projects you have. But if you want to follow along with us, we're going to get started with Canva and then go into Google Suite and then give you a little bit of time to explore our resources.
Alrighty, so starting with Canva, I just want to make a note. Kaylee, can you drop the link for the slide deck into
Yes.
the chat? Well, thanks. Angie, Kaylee is dropping that into the chat right now. But with Canva, I will just start off by saying Canva is a beast of a platform. You can do so many cool things with it. And because you can do so many cool things with it, it can be really overwhelming when you're first learning it. So I do highly recommend that if you are just starting out on your Canva journey, you take bite-sized chunks and do the same with your students. So like really focus on like specific aspects of Canva that you want them to use instead of like, all right, go be free on Canva, because, you know, some of our kiddos, they would thrive in that environment and go play and like make some really awesome stuff, and other kids will just like shut right down. So if you are new to Canva or you want to explore some things on our independent work time, Kaylee and I are both happy to take smaller groups into a separate breakout room to just like model some stuff. We're just going to go over some resources, some templates, some ideas for you to utilize for that collaborative tool. The one thing I do want to note is if you have not used Canva, you have not signed into Canva with your DPS account yet, you're going to want to follow the instructions on this slide to connect your district account, and that gives you the free educator access instead of just the free Canva account. That educator access is going to unlock like literally every font, template, tool. Like, it's crazy the things that you can do. You want your educator account instead of the free account. So we wanted to start off by just giving you some perspective. There's lots of teachers across the district utilizing Canva. Angie, you are like pioneering with your third graders on making these commercials. So we have a couple of videos for you. We're not going to show the entire videos here, but if you want to like look back on them, please feel free. This video, this set of videos highlights some students and a teacher at Bear Valley They're working on a new class. It's Bear Valley TV. And they are creating news stories that go out on the morning announcements on Friday. And this teacher just talks about, what he does, what he uses Canva for, and how he sets up those high expectations.
Canva's been a great resource for us because of how user-friendly it actually is. Our students all have access to it as part of their Denver Public Schools suite of apps anyway. And it's just so intuitively easy. I really like that Canva kind of allows you to keep your videos short and sweet. I don't need kids making 2, 3, 5-minute videos. So the 1-minute videos that we use on Canva are really perfect for us. And by the time we shoot 7 or 8 different video stories throughout the week, that's 7 or 8 minutes worth of morning announcements, and tends to kind of just be the sweet spot for what our kids are doing and needing. Canva, you can also allow me, but also some of the other people in the group to be able to collaborate as well. We spent a lot of time early on in our BVTV formation, just getting familiar with Canva, getting familiar with the tools, getting familiar on how to
so yeah, that cut off, but just getting familiar with the tools, how to share with each other, and then how to actively be on the same project, working at the same time. Similar to working in Google, there's some grace there. You can't type over each other. You can't move things that other people are doing. So having those tasks set out of I'm working on this and you work on that, you can overlap them working together on that. And then just some student voices here of, the students who are working on this project with the teacher at Bear Valley and what they think of it.
It helps us learn how to edit. Ooh, nice. And what are you guys doing right now? What are you going to record right now on Canva?
Interviewing people to see what they're doing on my screen.
Are you interviewing teachers, students?
Teachers and students.
We're using it to edit, to ask the questions, and to speak while asking.
Who are you going to ask questions to?
Principal. It's in the breaking news group in the beginning of the video. You get videos and you can edit what parts you want into the video. You could grab videos and then you put them into your video, and then you could also make your own edit, and then you can add text.
So yeah, they had some really cool stuff going on because this is a newer class. They're really getting into the anchoring news-ish format, having real news anchors come out to show them what they do. That was super exciting. Definitely something that got them really jazzed to make high quality content.
I think really a big thing about this is that it's real world, that what the kiddos creating are things that they see in the real world, and they're able to collaborate together for a real world product. And I think that's also where high expectations come in as well. They really are using this as professionals. This is a professional tool, and kiddos love Canva because of that.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more about how David Brewer structures this in his class and really sets the expectations for what students are doing when, you can go back and look at the rest of his video. It's about a 7-minute clip, but he really goes through and says on Mondays we do this, on Tuesdays we do this, on Wednesdays we do this, and then talks about how he's made them feel like professionals, which really increases the out product. And then when students see that they're making really high quality stuff, it really boosts their confidence too. And then they're oh my gosh, I made this, I got it, this is great. So when we're setting high expectations for student collaboration, especially within Canva, we want to make sure that the very first layer is that what we're having students do is grade level appropriate and the group roles are equal. We don't want one person to say okay, the facilitator is going to do 90% of the work, and then the other 3 group members are not really doing anything. We want to make sure that there's equal participation throughout the entire project, and that's going to look really different depending on the project that you're giving to students. We also want to make sure that the students fully understand their role in the group and how that contributes to the overall product. And again, like we were saying before, it's a really good idea to practice these roles in lower stake assignments before you like have them do it for their midterm, because when you have all of that added pressure of like, not only do we have to have a really good product, but it's for a grade, and like what I do is going to directly contribute to other people's grades, it can be really helpful for them to have practiced being in that role before, and knowing what's expected, so that they're like, oh yeah, like, you want me to be the questioner? I got it. Like, I've practiced that a bunch of times and like I feel easy breezy with it. Or letting them pick their own roles within the group, that can also be helpful. And then be really clear with timelines and work expectations. Again, Kaylee and I were former middle school teachers, so no matter what age range you have, it can be really helpful to say, okay, with your time in your group today, you need to get X, Y, and Z done. I used to have timers for days, so like, you should be working on this section for this long and this section for this long. And if you go a little bit over, or you're, breezing through it real fast, that's fine. But if I just give them an entire class period and say, go work in your groups, they're going to like sit there for 50 minutes and talk to each other about what movie they're going to see on Saturday, and then be like, Miss, we didn't have enough time to you didn't give us enough time. So giving them like those clear time expectations and like modeling them, having that scaffolded support of the timer can be super helpful to them, so that they know, oh, it really does take me 15 minutes to like read and analyze and annotate that article. And then providing examples that highlight high quality work. I always, if it's the first time you've given a project, it's hard, but if it's the second or third year that I've done it, I love to use actual student examples, because then it's not like, well, Miss is like 47, so of course she can do it. They're from their peers, real student work that has been done. So like, it also sets the bar for them of like, I can do this. Like, this is manageable, it's obtainable, like, we've got this. And it also gives them like that expectation piece of like, this is what your final product should look like. It's not just like thrown on there and then like, oh yeah, you're gonna totally get full credit, it's fine. Giving them that model piece is super helpful. So when you're collaborating on Canva, biggest thing is sharing. So you're going to want to make sure that your students know how to share. If you want to just take this slide out of the slide deck, you totally can in teaching your students. Any slides you can take out of the slide deck and do what you wish with them. But this is a good one because it highlights all of the different ways that they can share and when they would want to share those. So I like to just go through and, add people individually if I'm working in a group. If I have like a template that I want them to use and I have like group 1 is working on this and group 2 is working on this, I'll use that copy link feature and then like throw that into Schoology or throw it in Seesaw or Google Classroom or whatever LMS I'm using, so that like my groups have access to that collaboration link and then they all have edit access from that page. It's really helpful in case groups shift or if a person isn't there that day, then they have access to all of that. They can also then share with other groups through that link. So if they're doing like a collaborative feedback session, they can do a share or a view only link so that that group has access to view, but they don't mess with all of their stuff. There's also a bunch of different group templates that you can use in Canva. So these are hyperlinked. There's also links in the slide notes to all of these, and they're just different templates that Canva has already created. You literally just like pop in different titles, or like you can change the descriptions of things if you want to, but they're already set up in a way where like you don't have to build it from scratch. So these are different examples. You can use mind maps for that planning phase. You want to like talk about introducing group roles. That group roles one can be super effective in that. And then the assignment, you can see that they've split it into like, what are you supposed to do on the left-hand side? And then like, what does that like product end up looking like on the right-hand side? So those are all templates that you could utilize. Again, you can click that hyperlink and go through all of the different templates that Canva has to offer. And then when we're looking at group assignments, there are a couple different ways you can format these. So if you want students to work together collaboratively on a worksheet or a graphic organizer, again, Canva has templates for days. So utilize the templates. All of their templates are fully editable. So you can go into a template, you can edit the text, you can edit what you want it to look like, get rid of stuff, add it, add links, all of that good stuff. And then the other thing that I really like about Canva is that when I go through and make those changes, I can print it too. So students can have access. I can force them a copy of the template. They can do their own thing on their computers if they want to, but I can also print it out and then they have hard copies available to them as well. When you're having students work on worksheets and graphic organizers, you're going to want to make sure that your students are learning and processing the content together. So like, how are you structuring that assignment so that it is collaborative in nature and they're taking everything that they need to away from it? You can also scaffold materials and assign it to specific groups. So maybe I want them to, use the daily news template, but for some of my students, I want them to have sentence stems. I could put in those sentence stems and send them the link to that template so that they have access to it. It's all the same final product, but they get those added scaffolds and supports. And like I said, you can print them out and use them as paper copies. Now, this is one of my favorite things about Canva is the whiteboard feature. So the whiteboard is essentially just an unlimited page. There's no boundaries of it. So you can just keep adding and adding and adding. As you can see with the GIF right here, you can add stickers, you can add sticky notes, you can add text, and multiple people are working on this all at once. It's really awesome for brainstorming, collaborating. One person puts an idea, I can give it a thumbs up, I can heart it, I can ask questions on the side to it. So, maybe I'm doing a project where it's multiple class periods that are collaborating together. This is a great tool that I could use. And you can see the student contribution in real time. So if I'm on this template as students are working on it, I can see what student is typing where and what student is moving stuff around. The caveat here is that there isn't a revision history that shows this person made this edit at this time. So it's not like Google Docs where you can go back and see these are all of the people who made edits to this page at this time. You got to see it in real time if you want to see it. And then for creation, so maybe you're putting together a project where you just want them to create a final project together, do all the research for it. Here are a couple of different things that you can use. And I would say that if you're starting out with Canva, you're going to really want to give them templates, give them options, give them designs. If you have students who we're Canva pros, we know what to do, and we are essentially just marketing geniuses, and we're just gonna go off and run, you can just give them blank pages and they will go and make their own stuff. I would also say that if you have students who are newer to Canva, the videos or the animated features might be a little overwhelming. But again, I'm gonna go back to Angie, she's having third graders make video stuff, so they can do it. They just need the resources and the supports to get there. And then in that middle layer, I would do multi-page things, magazines, storybooks, comic strips, stuff like that. Whereas at the beginning, maybe we're just doing a flyer or an infographic, something that's one page, they learn how to do it, and then they move up through there.
Let's just skip discussions.
Yeah. Is there any questions?
Yeah, any questions on Canva or any of the resources for whiteboards or templates?
Absolutely, Brittany.
Yeah.
We can definitely.
We'll pop in a breakout room and have you share your screen for sure.
Yep. We're going to skip our discussion for right now just so that you have some play around time at the end.
Yeah, so we can support with specific questions. If you have any, just throw them in the chat too. These are we're going to shift into Google Suite real quick. because a lot of us have a working history with Google. This is going to be kind of, an overview with just some ideas sprinkled in. This is a student-facing slide, or it's for your own knowledge as well. If you're ever curious what the different share settings for view, comment, edit, and owner, it could be an interesting digital citizenship conversation to have with students as well when building SEL skills, like how much do you actually want to share with each other? This is also a student-facing slide. If you're having kiddos for the first time, or Jill, even in high school, I work with high schoolers. They're like, I don't know how to share a slide deck. It's like, oh my God, here's a slide just to give kiddos in case you need to give explicit instructions on how to get something shared with each other.
Sorry, I'm entranced.
Yeah, no, you're fine. And then this is just a Schoology pro tip. If you're having kids collaborate on Schoology with Google Drive assignments, it can get overwhelming for the teacher because every kid has an assignment pushed out to them. Just keep note of like the 3 kids who are the owners of the files that the groups are working on, so you know which 3 files to pull up each time you go into Schoology. Otherwise, you'll be clicking through 30 docs when only 3 docs are actually in use. Okay, so these are different ways to get kiddos collaborating on Google Docs. You can just set up a feedback structure where they're giving each other comments. You can facilitate peer reviews through Google Doc templates. So there's an elementary, middle school, and high school template. If you just want to click, say, middle school. You can have kiddos share out with each other and just structure a feedback conversation like, hey, reviewer 1, review the claim, the argument, or whatever it is, the criteria for success you have in, just giving them a template to collaborate on and give each other feedback in. Also, Drea mentioned using sentence stems. Those could be something that you work in those docs as well. You can have kiddos collaborate for research and gather their research in a doc. I liked doing collaborative note-taking in my social studies class, where each kid has a section that they either jigsaw collaborative note-taking, or they each find a different kind of theme to take notes on. Like you'll read this with a feminist lens, you'll read this with an economic lens. And then you can also have kiddos for that distinguished LEAP indicator manage their own products or manage their own projects, have them create an agenda in a Google Doc. They'll take notes on what they did as their group in a Google Doc, and it can really just be their collaborative workspace. Or you can even have kiddos do a collaborative writing assessment and have multiple voices in one assessment. So some ways to set up high expectations in Google Docs. You can use revision history to monitor student input. Like, yo, I don't see your name anywhere in this edit history. You can give feedback. When kids were collaborating in Google Docs, I had all of their documents open and I was giving feedback to them as they were working, so they knew that I was monitoring who was doing what. You can provide supports, whether they're graphic organizers, sentence stems, or criteria for success in the doc template, so students have that in front of them. And you can also model collaborative editing, which I highly recommend. Pull up a document and have another student jump in and model for the entire class what a positive collaborative editing relationship looks like, that it's okay to edit each other's work and give feedback.
This is also a time where I used to really try to pick out my students who aren't necessarily always getting called out to share. So my GT students are typically used to sharing out, this is how I do it, this is how I don't do it. But if I can pull out a student who maybe has not gotten an opportunity to share and just let them know hey, I really love what you're doing, can you highlight this with the group? That can be also really good SEL boost.
Totally. And then the last is just how to get kiddos collaborating in Google Slides. Again, you could do a jigsaw reading where each slide is a different passage that kids take notes on, and they have a whole deck together as a group that they complete. You could just do warm welcomes in a deck, again, building those SEL skills with lower stake activities. Kids can do a group presentation. I liked doing a class-made word wall each unit where I assign a different vocab word to each kiddo, and they each make their own slide or Frayer template, which gives the definition, some facts, examples, and pictures. And then I would print those out for my own word wall for the unit. Kids can create flashcards and do quizzes and slides. I did a weekly current event share out where each kid would give a link to an article and a summary. So we would have a current event deck, or you could even do like a cute little yearbook or scrapbook, and kids can gather like all their memories from, I don't know, the year.
Your class.
Yeah. So just some things to keep in mind when kids are collaborating in Google Slides. Model and teach them formatting. Oh, the way a slide looks matters, and modeling those expectations for kiddos on how to create titles or an appropriate font choice and color is something to definitely call out, even for elementary school kiddos. You can create a slide within the deck that tells you what those expectations and roles are. You could even put a rubric in the slide deck where kids are collaborating so they know how they're being assessed. And as I mentioned with Google Docs, just monitor their progress. Have their slide decks open. If they see your picture as the teacher in their slide deck, their behavior will change if they know that you're in it, and they know that there's like eyes, whether you have it open or not. Just having it, somewhere is important. And also just celebrate kiddos. Give in the moment feedback. Call out groups that are knocking it out of the park and saying like, hey, they're communicating great over here, or pull up their slides, and just continue to celebrate your kiddos for those positive SEL skills you're seeing them build. So that was a quick rundown of ways to use Google Docs and Google Slides. We have about 5 minutes before we need to go back into the main room. So this can be your time to click through some of those links or ask us some of those specific questions. I don't know, would you want to pop in a breakout room with Brittany real quick?
Yeah.
I'm happy to stay back and just answer any questions. Do we want to regroup? Do we have time to regroup?
I would say probably the best use of our time with what we have left, explore some of the resources, and then just think through what you're going to do, because we are going to have a full group reflection at the end when we go back into the main room. So just think through like what you're going to put on that Jamboard, and what you're going to do with your instruction and your life.
Yeah, how you're going to use Canva, Google Docs, or Google Slides in some collaborative way. If you need to learn how to log into Canva, Drea's going to do a quick breakout room, but I'll stay back here. And then I'll also give a link to the main room